Welcome to aminacademy.com. In material science and engineering, let us discuss about secondary bonding, that is van der Waals bonding. Secondary, that is van der Waals or physical bonds are weak in comparison to the primary or chemical ones. Bonding energies are typically on the order of only 10 kilojoule per mole or zero point 0.1 electron volt per atom. Secondary bonding exists between virtually all atoms or molecules, but its presence may be obscured if any of the three primary bonding types is present. Secondary bonding is evidenced for the inert gases which have stable electron structure, and in addition between molecules in molecular structure that are covalently bonded. Secondary bonding forces arises from the atomic or molecular dipoles. Secondary van der Waals bonds, also known as van der Waals forces, are weak bonds that form when dipoles are created in atoms or molecules due to an unequal distribution of charges. These bonds are weaker than primary bonds and are more susceptible to disturbance. Next one, fluctuating induced dipole bonds. A dipole may be created or induced in an atom or molecule that is normally electrically symmetric. That is, the overall spatial distribution of the electrons is symmetric with respect to the positively charged nucleus. Fluctuating induced dipole bonds, also known as London dispersion forces, LDFs, are a type of intermolecular forces that occurs between atoms and molecules that are usually electrically symmetrical. These forces are temporary and attractive, and they arise when electrons in two nearby atoms form temporary dipoles. Next one, polar induced dipole bond. Permanent dipole moments exist in some molecules by virtue of an asymmetrical arrangements of positively and negatively charged regions. Such molecules are termed polar molecules. Polar molecules can also induce dipoles in adjacent nonpolar molecules, and a bond will form as a result of attractive forces between these two molecules. Furthermore, the magnitude of this bond will be greater than for fluctuating induced dipoles. A dipole-induced dipole bond is weak attractive forces that occurs when a polar molecule induces a dipole in nonpolar molecules or atoms. A polar molecule's permanent dipole deforms the nonpolar molecule's electrons cloud, creating a dipole on the nonpolar molecules. This induced dipole moment depends on the polarizability of the nonpolar molecules and the dipole moment of the polar molecules. Van der Waals forces will also exist between adjacent polar molecules. The associated bonding energies are significantly greater than for bonds involving induced dipoles. The strongest secondary bonding type, the hydrogen bond, is a special case of polar molecule bonding. It occurs between molecules in which hydrogen is covalently bonded. Next one. What are molecules? Next one, permanent dipole bond. A permanent dipole bond that we discussed now, bond is a weak intermolecular forces of attraction between permanent polar molecules. It's an electrostatic attraction between the oppositely charged end of the molecules, with the delta positive and end of one polar bond attracting the delta negative end of another polar bonds. The more polar the molecules, the stronger the force of attraction. Permanent dipole bonds are stronger than temporary induced dipole forces. Next one, we'll discuss about a molecule. Many of the common molecules are composed of groups of atoms that are bound together by strong covalent bonds. These include elemental diatomic molecules. Consequently, molecular materials have relatively low melting and boiling temperatures. Most of these that have small molecules composed of few atoms or gases are at ordinary or ambient temperature and pressure. On the other hand, many of the modern polymers, being molecular materials composed of extremely large molecules, exist as solids. Some of their properties are strongly depends on the presence of van der Waals and hydrogen secondary bonds. In general, molecules are made up of one or more atoms. If they contain more than one atom, the atoms can be same. That is, for oxygen molecules has two oxygen atoms, or different. For example, a water molecule has two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom. Biological molecules such as proteins and DNA can be made up of many thousands of atoms. So far we discussed about van der Waals forces between bonds. That is secondary van der Waals bond, fluctuating induced dipole bonds, polar molecular induced dipole bond, and permanent dipole bond and molecular bond. We have done. Please subscribe our YouTube channel.